So getting into topic number 3, in-laws and extended family, and how that plays into our marriages. So before we get into question number 1, let's look at Genesis chapter 2, and we'll read this verse because this is pretty much what we're talking about in this next section. Genesis chapter 2, we'll start in verse 23. Actually, we'll start in verse 22. Then the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, he made into a woman, and he brought her to the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. How do we leave our parents from a practical standpoint? Obviously, we've left them. But how do we leave our parents from a practical standpoint and establish our own family? Ready, go.
I think it goes back to what we have already kind of talked about. When you have your routines and your habits, you may be living on your own, or you may still be living with your parents. And so you have to understand you're going into a new home, and this is your future. They are your past. They're still a part of you, but this is the future. This is where you're headed. This is the person who's going to be with you, hopefully, even after your parents are gone. This is the person that you've chosen. And so together, you form that relationship and make it be what you would like it to be.
And since you've come from different homes, whether it's your parents' homes or if you've lived by yourself a while, you have these routines and processes that you've either learned how to pay the bills, how to shop, whatever it may be. You've learned those practices. You each have learned those practices.
I did learn how to shop.
I got that one down.
I'm not surprised. But when this new unit, this new family is formed, now how are you going to pay the bills? As soon as they come in, or wait till you get paid, or whatever?
Or who's doing it?
Or who's doing it, right?
Right.
So you've got all of these new policies and procedures, if you will, that have to come into play. So more discussion, more communication is necessary in that regard.
And compromise.
Yes.
I know you had said, it was a big deal that you moved from Nevada to Chicago. So
Chicago, Illinois.
California to Chicago.
when we were talking about this question, so she was born and raised here in Louisville. Heather was. I lived here since I was in first grade. Both of our parents still lived here at the time in Louisville. Got married here. But like we were talking just the other day when we were talking about this question, it may have been better for us to move somewhere and be kind of more on our own. At the time, I don't know. At the time, I don't know if we would have even thought about that. But looking back on it now, as older, mature couple, that might have been really great for us to try to physically get away from our parents.
And majority of all the ways, it was the best thing he ever did for me because I was totally codependent on my family. I mean, one of the best stories of us driving there is because I was so codependent on my family. I literally, it's not a joke, it's serious. I cried from California all the way to Lincoln, Nebraska. And the reason I stopped crying in Lincoln, Nebraska, because he took my Hope Float CD and threw it out the window and said, enough. We're not listening to this.
I was still a work in progress.
We're not listening to this Tear in My Ears happy song anymore. Because literally, I kept listening to it over and over because I was so heartbroken. Because I was leaving my family. But when we had JD, it was just me and him in the room. No opinions, no moms fighting, who's going to be in the delivery room, nobody's opinions on names, just me and him in the moment. And I was like, this was the right thing. We had to cling to each other. There was nobody else around us to help out the cause.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like you have to truly move from your parents' home, not just the action of, but you have to move. You can't rely on them for things. And, you can rely on them, but you can't sit there and always know they're your backstop. They've always got your back. You've got to live on your own.
Like a default.
Yeah. 'Cause if you can't afford rent and food and electricity, then you ought not be getting married. You got to figure that out. Again, we talk about discussing finances before you even get married. You hopefully have talked about finances and can we afford to do this? Because if you can't, then you need to spend your time figuring out how to adjust your career before trying to figure out how to have a successful marriage. Because it's going to be, the poorer you are, the tougher it is. If you're stressing to pay the electricity, it's going to cause strife in your marriage, all relationships. But so you really got to do that first. But you got to set boundaries, especially if you're still in the same city. You've got to set boundaries. You can't just have family show up anytime, any day, unannounced, just to visit. It's like, no, you got to let us know. It's nice being in Texas now. We're far away from all family. They have to. It'd be nice if they visit a little bit more often, but they have to think about it. We have to think about it. So I think that's is an important point that you had on that.
From a mother point of view, from the parental side of this, when Zach and Audrey got married, they did move to Galveston. We came home from their wedding, and in the house we were living in at the time, I had to walk down the hall to get to our bedroom. Well, there was Zach's room, totally empty of everything, and I just broke down and cried. I shut the door and didn't open it for 5 days. It was that bad. Thankfully, he was right behind me and just enveloped me in a hug, and I said, when I quit crying, how'd you know that's going to happen? He said, I knew it was going to happen. But they lived on their own, and as hard as that was for me not to see them that often, it was the best thing for them. And they were gone, I don't know how many years, maybe 7, 8 years before they moved back. And by that time, they had 2 children. They had established themselves as a couple. I was so proud. We were so proud when we'd go to visit and see Zach doing work in the church and Audrey doing work on their own as individuals. That's your hope for your kids. I know we're not talking about our children in this, but from the parent point of view, if you have godly parents and you have godly children, you don't want your children, once they're married, under you anymore. You want to see them flourish. That's part of the pride you get in raising your children. And those boundaries are important. Our other children, another one lives close, but we have never been the kind of in-laws that get into their business. If they call me and ask me a question, they are definitely going to get that. They're going to get it. They're going to hear what I have been thinking in my head for a while, right? And they probably know that, so they don't call that often. But seriously, they do come for advice, and we're happy to give it. But it's them as the unit, and we are a unit. And even though we live only 10 minutes from Zach and Audrey, we don't ever just come over to the other person's house without asking. There are boundaries. I think you said that earlier.
Wade and I, when we first got married, we lived about 5 minutes from both of our parents.
Not even.
Not even. And it was just a default. Partly because we met in high school, so he would come over all the time. And he was friends with my mom, too, because we would all do stuff together. So it was hard, breaking that. But we moved one time just 30 minutes away. And just moving that 30 minutes away was huge because it was too far to come all the time. You had to make plans. Just that was enough distance. And so that's how I want my girls to live 30 minutes away. That's the
Not but
But not 35, but not 35 minutes.
30 minutes. I'm going to draw a circle.
You can live anywhere in this.
Yes.
The most dramatic thing I've ever seen in a wedding, the preacher, or the person conducting the ceremony, was the father of the bride. Went through the vows, and then he turned to her and said, "May I have our house key back?"
That would have broke my heart.
Wow.
And they were prepared. She gave him his house key and said, "This is no longer your home. If you have problems with your home, you can't just come running back and open the front door and come in. You need to work your problems out." Now, we're glad to hear about it, but not at 2 a.m. when you've had a fight. Okay. This is now your home. I think just about every person in the audience was crying at that point.
Oh,
Sure.
I would have been crying buckets.
Yeah.
But the point is exactly right.
I mean, the verse says you leave them.
Yeah.
I mean, and
And cleave to the other one.
yeah, I mean, it's to some degree at all levels, right?
Right.
Emotionally, physically, obviously, all financial. I mean, all those things should be part of the leaving. And then all that effort and energy should be focused on your spouse. We had talked about, dedicating time for yourselves to kind of start your own traditions, maybe purposely not going over, like politely declining the Sunday evening dinner every week, saying next couple of weeks we're just going to, like those things just to try to build some routine and traditions for your own family. Because it can be very easy just to, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but
I have a
depend on
story
your
about that. It's not us, but a friend of ours married someone and moved multiple states away from her home. He was probably close to 30 when they married, had never been married, and lived in the home not in the home, but in the town with his parents. His mom had decorated his house for him, helped put the furniture in, pictures on the wall, whatever. So the wife comes in to that house. Well, that's not her style. They have dinner every Monday night. That's just, as a mom, I totally get that. But this new wife had a lot of, with the mom, not wanting to hurt her, but this is now my home. I don't like that picture. There's too many things on the wall, too much furniture. I can barely maneuver. Finally, they had to sell that house and move into one that was their house. And it made all the difference. And the relationship is great and has gotten wonderful, but it is hard to start. And when you ladies become mother-in-laws, you'll see that. And parents, you just need to pull back.
Holidays, I think, were the hardest when we lived in California, because I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I didn't want to hurt my mother-in-law's feelings. I didn't want to hurt my mom's feelings. I mean, I think I jumped through so many hoops to make sure everybody was happy. We were miserable. So I'm actually glad we're over here. I'm like, I don't have to go anywhere. It's my house. You can come to me if you want to spend a holiday with me.
Well, and to piggyback off of that, as the older set with all the grown children, we have 4 kids between us. Everybody's got themselves, us, and at least one more set of parents to deal with. That's a lot. And we decided early on, Christmas Eve doesn't have to be at my house, and I don't have to spend it with my kids. Christmas Day, I don't have to. Thanksgiving Day, I don't have to. I could do it on Friday, or I could do whatever. And slowly, our kids kind of figured that out, and then things got rotated. But we were even thanked by one of our kids for never causing a problem, because the other 2 parentals were. My day is on this day. You will be here. No, that's my day. And we said, we just want to spend time with you. So come when you can.
Yeah, the whole compromise aspect. We had, it was very close friends coming in one time to visit, And we ended up having Thanksgiving on the Saturday before because that's when they were going to be there. You know, it's the same meal. It tasted really
That's
good.
right.
And it didn't interfere with football.
Right.
So it was perfect.
These are all great comments to the second question that I haven't asked yet.
Yeah.
But no, y'all are doing this great.
That's all right.
No, but to that point, y'all kind of been talking about now. How do we handle differences in family dynamics between your family, so like my family, and the extended family, right? I view that as like the dynamic between me and Heather's family, and then Heather to my kind of the same. It sounds like with y'all a little bit. Heather came from a family that weren't Christians. I mean, they were very good moral people. They didn't attend services anywhere of any kind. They weren't very religious. Just good people, right? So that was a big deal. And then just the dynamics of your daily life. My mom, if she's listening or watching,
Watch out.
she had her regular things she would cook, right? They weren't very elaborate. They're very good, very tasty, Mom. But she just had her set thing. Heather's mom and her nanny were amazing cooks. So
Days and days and days.
yeah, so I mean, just the difference in that, like at holidays. My mom at holidays wasn't in the kitchen doing stuff.
Couldn't find her sometimes.
Like me and Heather cooking. At Heather's house, we weren't allowed in the kitchen. You know, so just little things like that you had to kind of work through, and that's pretty trivial. But throwing it out there, how do you handle differences in those family dynamics in a practical standpoint that you have between your family and your extended family?
First of all, the new family has to decide what they want. A lot of conversation, a lot of hard conversations in how are we going to do these things. And there may have to be some conversations with in-laws. And those are, depending upon the in-laws, that could be difficult as well. But then you'd understand, the in-laws need to understand that if we're the in-laws, we're not number one anymore. Blake wants his boys to have Christmas morning at their house. Perfect. That's fine. We can sleep a little later. I served my time staying up late, getting up early. But serious conversation needs to take place in the new home first, and then ease that into the in-laws.
I think my brothers are pretty good with you. I'm asking because I think it, just because I don't,
In what way?
you guys don't bump heads.
Oh, no.
He has a sister, two very strong-willed people, me and her. We, in the beginning, bumped heads to the point where I'm like, you're going to have to take this battle on with her because I'm going to go for the jugular and it's not going to be
But
pretty.
that's the thing. When there does need to be a battle, so called, it needs to be the person who's blood related.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
to
say
Yeah.
them.
that's a very
And
big.
there's still going to be some consternation. The in-law might still think it's only because of her that he's saying this, but if you've discussed it and it's the right thing to do, you're confident, and again, you're coming from an aspect of love with the spouse first, and if you approach it the right way, if they get upset, they get upset, but you still have to do what's right for you and your family unit, and let the chips fall. If they want to be upset, you can't help that necessarily, so you move forward.
And ironically now, me and that sister are the closest out of all three of his sisters. But I had to learn, I'm like, this is not my battle. This is his sister. This is his battle. And just like with my brothers, he's like, you need to, I'm like, okay, I got it.
And for me, one thing, I just always, because I would think things are going great, because like Heather was saying before, we met in high school. There would be times when she was at college, if we were home for the summer, me and like Ryan Hignight's people, we'd be over at her house. She's not even there, playing cards with her mom. So like I've had a really good relationship with her mom since I was like 16. like we were friends. And so then it transitioned, like everybody, her mom and her nanny loved me. It's like, where's that wedding? So great. And then we got engaged, and then I was taking her away, right? And like her life was gonna be over because now she was marrying somebody from Church of Christ. I just always trying to don't take it personal. Just keep showing kindness and love. And I think eventually, not because I did something great, but I think taking God's wisdom and applying it, that actually helped as days and years went on to make things a little bit easier in some aspects. Last one, real quick, in this topic. How do we continue our responsibilities towards our parents even though we've left them?
The fifth commandment, honor your father and mother, doesn't have an expiration date. They're always going to be your father and mother. When they age and need to be cared for, I don't know how you've been through this as well, you gladly do it. Is it my responsibility? Yes, but we do it out of love. The fifth commandment is given and repeated many times in the Old Testament. It's referred to in the New Testament. So it's that which we do. Honoring them and providing for them when necessary, is very necessary. Mark 7 talks about the Pharisees using tradition in the place of the law. I would love to give you the profits from this, but I've already given that to God, Corban. Okay. That was knocked down by Jesus very quickly. In 1 Timothy 5, Paul talks about widows and family taking care of them. So it's a responsibility that is ours. And we're in the midst of that. We were in the midst of it when my mother was ill. And you were, and you are now with your dad. And I'm not sure about your family.
We before we were married, when we were engaged, we walked his dad to the grave from cancer, and then still 8 years, still hurts.
Yeah.
Walked my mom because of cancer.
Yeah.
And while I know we're talking about how do we care about caring for our parents, and even while that is extremely important, and I'm not trying to knock it, your girls are watching your example of you taking care of your dad now.
Yeah.
You're modeling for them exactly what they need to do for you or for their spouse's parents. And there cannot be a better model for that than really living it. It's one thing to say it, to read it in here, but that's a financial hit, that's a time hit, that's an everything. And look at the benefits you get from that. And you'll have no regrets, 0 regrets.
And your children have benefits as well.
Oh, they're getting so many benefits of your daddy being there with you
Been neat
guys.
to watch.
A little bit different slant, and I had to turn towards y'all down there. We need, I think, to continually seek the advice of our parents, and I'm assuming, I'm not in that place yet, y'all are. It has to bolster you when your children come to you for advice about life, marriage, money, whatever, to where they trust you that you'll give them biblical advice, you'll give them good, solid advice, and that they care about you, and that's why they're seeking your advice.
And part of that goes back to we don't butt into their business, right? So because we're not like this with them, they're all their own person. They're all their own families, and we're respectful of that, but it does breed that coming to us on occasion. Each of them do that on occasion. What do you think about this? Here's a situation. And we're appreciative of that.
All right. Well, we'll end there. Great conversation, great thoughts. Thank you all, everybody, and we'll wrap up with topic 3 of in-laws and family, and start topic 4 with Bud leading us in working on our own faith.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook for more content like this.